Junior's grades.
Hey, what's up? PDX Guitar Freak here, and welcome to my lesson on how to play the guitar solo from the classic Van Halen song, and the Cradle Will Rock. Now, as I normally do, down below in the About section, or whatever they call it by the time you see this video, I'll include the times where each section of the video starts, along with a link to that section, so you can kind of go back and forth as needed. In addition, I should mention up front that this song requires that your guitar be in standard tuning. And I mention that because most Van Halen songs require that your guitar be tuned down 1/2 step. So keep that in mind, although you'll probably notice immediately when you try to play along. Let's get going. So section 1 is the first of 2 sections to contain finger tapping. First part of it's pretty straightforward, and then it gets a little bit tricky. But all of the finger tapping you're going to be doing with your right hand is going to be on the 13th fret of either the B or the G string, and I'll explain which string you're on at any particular time. So you start off on the B string like this. Pretty straightforward. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hammer on with your left hand on the 10th fret of the G string, kind of out of nowhere. Bend up a full step so you hit the G note, like going from here to here. And hold that for a second. So here it is again from the beginning, slowly. Now, I've seen people who don't do that bend at the 10th fret of the G string, and instead they move from the 7th fret of the B string to the 8th fret. You're still playing a G note, but it sounds a little bit different. It goes like this. So you're ending up at a G note. But that's how I see a lot of people do it, but when I listen to the original recording and I slow it down, I can hear that it's really quick, but I can hear him bending up into the note. I don't hear a quick slide into the note. Plus, even though it's the same note, when you play it on the G string, it's not as bright sounding as it does on the B string, and that's another giveaway for my ear. So after you do that bend at the 10th fret of the G string, that quick bend up, you're going to do a bend you're going to do a tap with your right hand on the 13th fret and hold it and do a little dip back up and then release like this. Oops. Release down, pull off to the 9th fret like this. So should be pretty straightforward, hopefully. Here it is from the beginning, slowly. And what I typically do, as I mentioned, slowing it down and listening, is I'll practice along to the original recording at about anywhere between 60 and 75% of the original speed, and get the phrasing down slow, and then slowly speed it up until I get it at the right speed. Now the next section starts off with a 1.5 step bend at the 5th fret of the G string, which is a C note. He's bending from here up the equivalent of 3 frets to here. Applying pinch harmonics. If you don't know what that, I won't even go there. If you don't know what that is. All right, let's go. And I think when you do that 3rd fret of the G string bend up a full step and then give it a vibrato, That's kind of a tricky one. Most people, when they do bends with their index finger, they're doing a half step bend or quarter step, you know, this classic type of thing. Or like that. They're not doing, that sounds funny, but full step bend. But I've seen Van Halen do that on numerous solos, and he's one of the few guys, although I think the first time that I saw someone do a full step bend with their index finger, or heard it, was Jeff Beck. I think it was on Freeway Jam or something off of that Blow by Blow album where I was learning it, and it was just like, whoa, that's kind of funky. And some people will not bend up with their index finger. They prefer, because it can be tricky if you've never done it before, they prefer to bend with their ring finger. So an alternative to doing the... you can also bend down, which might be easier. But then it's kind of funky doing the vibrato. You can go like this. So you can see that I slid down to that note from the 5th fret instead of doing the pull off, and then did the bend. And I've seen a lot of people do that. It's kind of easier, but again, to my ear, when I listen to the original recording, I don't hear that slide down. I just hear the pull off and the bend up. The next section, probably one of my favorite parts of the solo, it's got this cool ascending, smooth run that Eddie does. And first off, my best advice for playing this section is you just gotta let it out. You gotta feel it, and don't get too hung up on trying to figure out, you know, where you are at any particular point, because this is one of those shoot from the hip kind of licks that Eddie does, where he's not thinking, oh, I must be make sure I hit the D note when the bass hits the G pedal. You know, Eddie doesn't do that shit. I mean, he's just letting it flow out. So that's my best advice: is just kind of try to get the feel down, and also make sure that you come in at the right time, because I found with this lick, a lot of people will come in a little bit too late. They want to come in right when this one particular note is hit. You got to come in a little early on this one. Hope that makes sense, but it'll probably make sense when you're playing along to the original and trying to figure it out. But here it is slowly. Not sure how much more I can explain on this one. If you read tabs, hopefully you do, you can follow along. One thing that's kind of weird is when you get up onto the G string and you do that slide up from the 7th to the 9th, instinctively you want to use your middle finger next to do the 8th fret, but you're going to use your index fingers. That might seem kind of weird on first time. Other advice I can give on this one, you got the pinch harmonics on the high E string, I've tapped that out. But as you're doing that final bend, before you do the slide up, lower the volume. Lower it probably around halfway. It's going to depend, because you're setting yourself up for the next part. You know, lower it about halfway, because the next part, the lick is played with the guitar volume down. It's kind of quiet. So depending on your amp setup, depending on your guitar, the pickups, you might have to turn it down even lower than that. Or not as much, but you want to get yourself prepared for the next lick. The next lick, the one that goes, he's got the guitar volume down when he's doing that. And it sounds like he's doubling that part. When I listen to the actual recording, it sounds like he doubled that. So if you're recording, you might want to consider doubling it to get that sound as authentic to the record as possible. In the next section, he's got some classic kind of, I don't know if it's called double stops, not really double stop, but he's got a classic kind of blues rock based licks where you're borrowing the 5th fret of the B and the E strings and bending up on the G string. And then down to this position. And And then he's going to slide up to the 9th fret of the G, sorry, 10th fret of the B, and get ready with his index finger on the 7th fret of the E and do this. And then he's got another blues bass type lick. My best advice there is not to let the notes blend together like this. That's not what you're going for. You want to kind of make sure that each note is accentuated on its own, and like you're kind of only hitting that note and not letting them blend together. And you do that by muting the unwanted strings you're not using, and also by lifting up off that string when you're done with the note. And also playing a bit of a pinch harmonic on there too, that helps. And then the finger tapping. The last two of the finger tapped parts of that lick, where he's the second finger tap of each part of that, if that makes sense. I'll circle what I'm talking about right now. Those taps are really fast. It's almost like you're not even doing it to do a tap, you're doing it more to just make the note sound. If that makes sense. And the slide up. And then the last part of it, pretty self-explanatory. You're starting off on the G and B strings like this. And then you move to the E and B strings like this. And to be honest, that's how most people play it, but I think that was another overdub. I honestly think that what he's doing is going like this, holding that, and then behind that going, so they're kind of going simultaneously. But if you're trying to recreate it live, I see most people doing it the way I just did it, where you're kind of starting on the G and B and then doing the B and E instead of doing them at the same time. Well, that wraps up my lesson on how to play the guitar solo from Van Halen's and the Cradle Will Rock. Hopefully you found it helpful and informative. As usual, I will attempt to answer questions as time allows. So until next time, I say rock on.